Philip Hammond speaking to me a short while ago. Well, joining me now is Lord West, who is the former head of the Navy and a former security minister. And also in our Westminster studios, we're joined by Labour MP Jeremy Corbyn, who is the vice chair of the campaign for nuclear disarmament. Gentlemen, a very good evening to you. Jeremy Corbyn, let's start with you. Did Philip Hammond, the Defence Secretary, convince you there?
Not at all. He also grossly understated the real cost. He talked about £25 billion to replace the Trident system and the submarines, which are the biggest part of the cost. What he didn't include was the running costs of it. The estimates that most people seem to accept are that over the 25 years lifetime of this new system, it's about £100 billion it's going to cost us. And you have to ask yourself two questions. One is, it is a weapon of mass destruction which, if used, will indiscriminately kill a very large number of ordinary civilian people. And secondly, what security does it bring us other than sets us apart from the rest of the world that is adhering for the most part to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty? And if we fulfilled our obligations under Article 6 of that treaty and started our own process of disarmament, we would be making a big step towards helping us achieve a nuclear-free world. I want talks with people to bring about peace, not threats of war.
Let's see if we can get those questions answered for you by Lord West. What would you say?
Well, I don't agree with the figures that Jeremy's come up with. I mean, basically, the cost of Trident and the future, the new submarines, if they run on as well, is about 6% of our defence budget.
So you can, a huge amount of money, though.
Then you can, well, it is if you add it up over 50 years, but it's far less than, for example, the Typhoon fighter programme, for example. I mean, anything in defence is expensive.
Is there not a better way of spending our money on schools, hospitals? Think what you could buy for that.
Well, except that there's always a conundrum in defence, isn't there? It's all, I mean, having fought in 2 wars and seen what it's like and how nasty it is, I would much rather if one didn't have to spend any money on any weapons at all. But I'm afraid the world isn't like that. And there's always a balance between how much do you spend on defence, whilst at the same time making sure you don't overspend when there's not a major war going on, because you want to have medical care, education, things like that. And I do believe that these submarines are an ultimate guarantee that something really horrible can't be done to our nation. And for the amount involved, I think it's worth it.
Jeremy Corbyn, I'm sure you don't leave your house uninsured. Why should we leave the country like that?
Well, the majority of countries in the world do not have nuclear weapons, have no aspiration to get them. The whole of Latin America...
What about the ones that do, though? Iran,
the whole of Latin America and the whole of Africa are nuclear weapons-free zones. Central Asia, likewise. Iran is still part of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and I would strongly urge that we actually make that work by promoting a Middle East nuclear-free weapons zone, which is certainly on the cards. Why not open discussions with North Korea? Why not bring about that possibility? But if we rearm, then that means others are likely to rearm as well. What security did it give anyone on 9/11 that the USA, the most nuclear-armed country in the world, had all those weapons? Answer, none at all.
Lord West, it's a great point, isn't it, that Jeremy Corbyn's making, because even the national security system, I believe, has downgraded this to Tier 2. And surely terrorism and cybercrime are much more relevant problems in the 21st century than a nuclear threat that we would know about, wouldn't we?
Well, clearly this system is not designed to counter terrorists or cybercrime. And when I introduced the national security strategy, we didn't have one before in this country, and I put it in place.
And it's now downgraded.
And the way on which I based the levels of things were, I agree, to do with likelihood and impact. And I admit, at the moment, at this very moment in time, the likelihood of a real nuclear threat is less than that of those other things. But that doesn't mean there won't be one. We just can't, even tomorrow, we can't predict what will happen tomorrow, let alone in the next 30 years. And when one talks about reductions and nuclear reductions, we have done very well. I'm a multilateralist. I believe we should try and get multilateral reductions. We are the only one of the big countries to have reduced down to one system. The number of warheads we had is dramatic. What impact has that had on other nations? Almost none. And I'm very worried about this latest measures, which I think is unilateralism on the stealth. And I do think unilateralism is dangerous. We have more capability of multilateral disarmament if we actually maintain our guard and join in that debate.
OK, Jeremy Corbyn, just the last word from you. Lord West is the expert here, isn't he? He used to run our Navy. Surely we should listen to him. And also, just to get your reaction to a couple of our viewer comments today, a lot of them disagreeing with you. Kieran Tomlinson saying, with countries developing their nuclear technologies as much as they are, there should be no change to our warheads. And Peter Pounder saying, only having 2 submarines would save money, but it could cost thousands of lives. Leave it as it is. What would you say to them?
Well, Lord West himself downgraded the nuclear threat, and I think those that think we should have nuclear weapons should ask themselves the question, against whom would they use them and why, and would they be content with the millions that would die as a result of it? There is no security in nuclear weapons or weapons of mass destruction. There is much more security in looking at the causes of conflict, the causes of tension and the causes of war, and trying to overcome them. This is some kind of Cold War philosophy that we're still embroiled in.
Final word from you.
Well, I mean, I disagree that these don't provide security. I think it does. I agree completely that we need to look at the causes of conflict and things like that. But I believe this is our ultimate insurance policy. I'm afraid, we know from history, people can be really, really nasty countries to each other. We don't know what will happen even tomorrow. We can't predict. And let's stay with the status quo. We're all doing is buying new submarines. We're not getting a new system. And we are probably the least of all the countries that have nuclear weapons. We are not pushing it and trying to add to it.
OK, Lord West and Jeremy Corbyn, thank you both very much for your time tonight.